Hey, what's going on, guys? We are back with another episode of the PokeTalk podcast. Not a whole lot of news happening this time around, but we'll touch on some topics and share our opinions as usual. But I'm here with Phillip. What's going on?
Not too much. We'll share those opinions whether you want to hear them or not.
But if you're here, you're gonna hear them.
You ain't going nowhere. Yeah, not too much though. It's a slow cycle. We sent off my cards to be graded. There's definitely a couple in there to try to get that 20 card minimum that were honestly like I'm gonna break even probably. Essentially, that's probably gonna happen. But overall, it was worth it to get that lower cost. I didn't have time to because they were already kind of close in order to get them back in time before KCCon, and I didn't have time to buy a bunch of stuff and be like, okay, let's buy more singles online, and then okay, let's send this off. That would have been another week. So
Yeah, and I didn't have much or anything really to send off. I've been kind of semi-collecting cards, but yeah, I need to decide with CollectCon. I said before I'm going to be cash heavy for some grails, but I could potentially use that to pick up some raw cards and make some plays and, try to make a little more out of that. So that might be an option in CollectCon. We'll see. I might do a video where I sit down and just look at ultra modern, full arts and alt arts and stuff like that and just make a buy list where if I see this card and I think it's going to get a 9, I'm going to buy it for this price. If I think it's going to get a 10, I'd buy it for this price. And I just want to make a little mini list to go with me at CollectCon just so, I don't have to spend as much time looking it up. I can just, okay, this, I'll buy it for this. This, I'll buy it for that. And then just have a little collection of stuff to grade after, or potentially just drop right off at the PSA booth. Because, you don't have to, PSA always has a booth there where you can just submit right there, so that's nice.
Yeah.
What's your plan? Still hunting out that Charizard?
Well, that's still the long-term plan. The grade we'll see. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. What it ends up being that's going to happen. It's just a matter of when is it going to be. There's a possibility it might not be till early next year. We'll see. It kind of just depends on a few things. But going into KC, it's going to be kind of some of what you're doing. I think you're going to be after some more altars tonight. I will add a couple into the list that I think are kind of have room to grow more. Now, a lot of the alt arts that we'll kind of talk on a little more have also had a little bit of a bump in terms of their market price. So I don't know. It just kind of depends on what the prices are. But I do like the idea still of going after character rares and even certain special rares, maybe cards that I think will do well in about 3 to 5 years time.
Yeah.
And I will add probably a few alt arts to that because we've discussed it multiple times on this podcast. Alt arts are one of the best things to invest in if you're investing into ultra modern. Now it really just comes down. I also like the idea of buying a bunch of $1 or whatever character rares and selling them in hopefully a couple years when it hits 5. But but there's only so many of those I want to be after, like the Gengar, the Smeargle, a few more beyond that. I think the Spirit Tune would be a good one. Just a handful of them. Not everyone. Alcremie, right? I don't need that one, right? Just go after.
Still gotta plan it out. It's not gonna be everyone, but some of the key ones that everybody likes.
Gengar is a no-brainer. It's still pretty cheap. That could easily be a $10 to $15 card down the road. So, there's cards like that I want to buy in bulk. That's kind of what I'm going to be after is those type of cards. And it's got to have, at minimum, a chance at a 10. So, at worst, 9, essentially. And the centering can't be terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would grade it though. But I want to have that option down the road if they go up enough to make it worth grading.
Yeah, and ideally, I mean, either way, we'd probably have to see some lower PSA cost or prices to grade. So I don't know where that would really come into play, but
I mean, $14 is pretty damn low. uh,
in a
what
way,
we
yeah.
said.
But
I guess we got down. What was it? Was it $9? It was 10 and then $9 when we sit into Ludkin's eons ago.
yeah,
So I mean, yeah, that is a different. But if you consider, I don't know,
well, you
that's
got to think
13.99
like
isn't crazy.
99% of the hobby though is cards that can't be graded. I mean, it's
Yeah.
only the chase cards
Oh, I
that
know.
are we're sending in. So yeah, if we saw like, and yeah, there would have to be stipulations of like $50 declared value or something like that.
Well, I
Because
mean,
if you start offering like $5 to grade, and people are sending in,
oh God.
set hollows to be graded,
At that
that's the
point.
stuff they'd be seeing. But yeah, then people would be trying to sneak in even more stuff as well. So
I mean, right now you basically need about a card worth about $50 more or less. Maybe with the value tier you can lower that to about maybe 40, 35, maybe. But if it's anything lower than that, it's not worth grading. And a lot of those cards, the character rares especially, are in about that area with the PSA 10s. Believe it or not, though, for at least this, it's been about 2 weeks since I last looked. Smeargle in a PSA 10 is actually like 40 to $50. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's a gorgeous card, but it's just interesting how I was not expecting that price. I could see that one potentially going down a little bit more.
yeah, and stuff's creeping up. I mean, we talked about, you already mentioned Evolving Skies and stuff, but we're starting to see like Team Up. Those sets people
Mm-hmm.
were really searching out for in the pandemic that got dried up really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People are still searching for those, and prices on that stuff is going up still. So yeah, stuff has been moving here lately. Nothing too crazy, but stuff is definitely moving. Um, I just saw like a stat where there was like a university Magikarp. I can't remember if it was a
Mm.
9 or a 10, but like whatever it was, people made the comparison like it was the same price as a Moonbreon Black Label. So stuff is kind of getting like 2020
That's
where stuff
that's a little
doesn't,
bit a little bit crazy,
yeah,
honestly. Like
stuff doesn't
knowing
really make
this.
sense for what the card is. And the older, rare, minter, better isn't really playing out very well lately.
No, and you see, not everybody. I think you also not everybody within the hobby cares about the history as much as some of the early people. I feel like because the University Magikarp is pretty interesting with its history, especially how you had to get it by writing an essay and all that. It's that to me just kind of the story behind it. Not everybody cares about that. I think, but there's a lot of that being because it's not involved in what people know necessarily. It happened. Some of these people might not have even been born.
Yeah.
So to them, they don't care. They don't have a connection to it. But I think there's a lot to play about social media exposure, and that has a big role in this.
Hmm. Yeah, the that's kind of one of our main topics this time around. Is we're not really seeing the older, rare, minter, better play out. That's the way things used to be before you really had as the hobby as big as it is. Um, but now we're seeing, newer, more demand stuff like the Moonbreon just continue to roar because, yeah, I don't know if it's people have just accepted, that they can't really catch up when it comes to the old cards or the old sets, and they just decide to settle in on like one big card, and the big card they want is, whatever's hot and bothered in the moment, which is the Moonbreon still. So It's interesting. I don't know if there's ever going to be a card here in the near future that can take that over. But yeah, it also was like just in a perfect timing scenario. It's like when the
Mm-hmm.
alt arts just came out and Eevee Heroes, Evolving Skies just hit the mark, and the alt arts were like incredibly rare. So they kind of stepped back and introduced the character rares pretty quickly after that. But those few sets around Evolving Skies included, it's just really, really hard to pull the card you want. I mean, you may as well make the comparisons to the old EX Gold Star sets, multiple boxes you would have to open just to get one Gold Star, and then, double or triple that amount to get all three potentially, but you might get duplicates. So that's kind of what you're seeing with the EX era. You might get one alt art every one or two boxes, but then you have to open, double or triple that to get three. But
Well,
instead of like two gold stars or three gold stars, there's like 10
I don't
plus
know.
alt arts.
I don't know why people are also. There's still a lot of people I feel like opening Evolving Skies, and I don't understand why.
Evolving Cries.
Evolving Cries, exactly. And I know a lot of people are keeping it, doing it with the intention of keeping it sealed. But I mean, does this make sense to you? $800 for an Evolving Skies booster box. Does that make sense to you?
No.
Something that released just what was it? It was 2021, right? August 2021.
I think so.
So we're not even 3 years, and this thing is what, 5.5 times what the MSRP is. I mean,
It's like August 21.
yeah,
That's
that
when it
I
came
thought
out.
because they had EV Community Day again, whenever it came out in celebration.
Yeah.
And I remember being in August that year because it was another 2 day thing, and I don't know. It just that doesn't make sense to me. I'm not bashing the set by any means. I mean something you could have gotten as plentifully as this, and how much it was printed, and we're at 785 a booster box. I worry that this rug can be pulled under, and you don't want to be caught holding the bag.
hmm I think a lot of people, it was a lot of hype at first, and then people kind of backed off, but then it had the
Mm-hmm.
second wind. I think it's mostly because Scarlet and Violet has kind of calmed down. But I mean, we called it. We called that they were going to start Scarlet and Violet on a pretty chill level compared to how they were
Mm-hmm.
going, because every generation you need to kind of step back a little bit. You can't just keep going crazy forever. So, yeah, I think it was just a little lackluster. So people, yeah, just really just looked at all the other options. What's the other option? What's the other super modern chase card? Maybe a few cards in 151, but it's it's like that's it for the set cards. That's where it's at. So a lot of people were still going strong on that, and just Sword and Shield in general. Those were the sets that people got into the hobby on. So Evolving Skies and the craze around Umbreon was the craze around Charizard for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's just that's become the icon, and all the little kids now are asking about Umbreon. They're not necessarily asking about Charizard all the time, although he's up there. But Umbreon was definitely one of the cooler Gen 1 Pokemon, but you never had like die-hard fans like Umbreon only. It's like it's become the new Charizard, like in all aspects. Any Umbreon card is pretty pricey compared to all of the other equivalents to it.
And you have to wonder at its current price at 1,300, which has gone up what, $500, $450 since the beginning of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like a 40% growth or whatever it is, and obviously that's, to me, that screams hype. Um, but it's just came back down not too long ago from like 1,300. Was it just last fall or late summer? It was kind of around the same price, and like it hit like 850 around the end of the year, beginning of this one, and it bounced back up. And you have to wonder. I mean, this the only thing that I can really think is that this card's going to have ebb and flows. It's going to be very vulnerable to hype. And when I say that, I'm not suggesting to go out and buy, especially at this current market price. But in my opinion, it should be between a $600 and $800 card. The 850 it was going for was slightly high, but I understood it. Now it doesn't make sense. I mean, if you can get this card in that six to 900, 800, whatever price range, it might be a long term hold. But if you're okay with that, I'm curious to know where this card might go because I don't see this ebb and flow you see with this card ending. This has now captured the hobby. It is, as you said, it has the Charizard, the Charizard sort of mystique
Choizord.
around Charizard, Charizard, and you have to wonder. I mean, could this card in the right market go crazy? I mean, it already is, but I mean like 5x, 7x sort of within a few months hype, like 2020 pandemic hype. And I don't think the whole hobby can necessarily do that anytime soon. But one card, I think that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I don't know where it could go. I mean, it's definitely a solid staple at this point. I don't think it's ever going to go down to like 500 for a PSA
No,
10, but
no.
it's just one of those cards that's going to fluctuate up and down. Even if there's another Umbreon, like a better Umbreon card that comes out, it's going to, maybe dip a little bit, couple hundred off, couple hundred up. It's just going to kind of float there anywhere around the 1,000, 1,100 mark. I feel like it's a card where if it hits 1,000 in a PSA 10, people scoop it up. Um, so yeah, I think it's gonna hover around here for quite a while. It's just wild to me. I don't think I'd ever buy one. I'd buy the Japanese one, but it's even more expensive.
Well,
So
I will say this: I do regret not buying that um, Umbreon VMAX. Was it 20? Was it last year?
no,
No, it
it
was
was the year
2022.
before, and I was gonna
Yeah.
ask you. I figured you'd be glad you didn't buy it because you would have had to hold that. You were gonna buy it for 1,000, right?
No, 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 no. He had it raw, I think, for 450.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the guy, but it was at the end of day Saturday. I looked at it, it looked pretty clean. I was like, what do you want for it? I mean, it was like, I remember it was between 400 and 500. I don't remember the actual price. I want to say it was 450, and it would have wiped me out in cash on Saturday.
I think that's when
And
the tens were going for
yep,
650 or something.
yep, 6 to 700. By the end of the year, I think they were already up to 8 to 900. Now I would have sold it probably then, but if I would have waited for a year on that card, I would have potentially, after everything, doubled my money. Now, maybe even tripled in the right market. If I could have been that guy that sold his for like 1,700 or whoever it was. But realistically, I could have made about 500 to 600 bucks on it. But I mean, it is what it is at this point. I didn't do it because it would have wiped me clean out, and that was what I chose. Now, kind of that same thought process. If there's a card like that, I feel like that could hit it. It could make some sort of growth in the next year. I will, especially if something comes out between now and then. But I don't think there is at this point, especially after seeing the new cards. Um, so, I mean, I think that's why the more patient route makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Just gotta, I don't know, it just depends what you want. Like I said, it's a
Yeah.
lot easier if you're not chasing the dollars because then you just wait it out and just buy on the dip or when you think is a good time or when you get the money. But yeah, if you're trying to make the money plays, it's kind of, I don't know. It kind of goes back to what it used to be as far as sets go. Like if there was a chase card in the set, you waited. If you wanted it immediately, you waited until like a month after the set came out, because then the cards went down because more people got their hands on it. So I feel like that's still true for Ultra Modern. Like if you really want the card, buy it a month or two after it comes out, after some PSA. Like it's if you're wanting to buy graded, you probably need to wait a little longer because you need to wait for the cards to actually be graded, obviously. But yeah, you just want to wait it out, let people get cards in their hands, wait it out a little longer if you want people to get PSA graded cards in their hands. The more people who have them, the lower the cards will go. So that's still pretty true, but with these other cards like this, the time to buy, it just depends when you're trying to hold long term. I mean, is that 6 months out? Is that 4 months out? You just kind of got to look at the market, and when things start stabilizing, when things are trickling down and then they kind of plateau, that's usually a good time to buy if you're really pro on the card. So just got to keep your eye out for that stuff. And then if you buy it after the fact, it's really, based on feeling. I wouldn't buy a VMAX Umbreon right now. When everybody's like talking about it, it's usually not a good time to buy because it's inflated. But yeah, maybe even more people talk about it tomorrow or the next day or the next day. Who knows? Just buy what you like. If you're making money moves, then you should be talking more quantity anyways. You're not gonna make it big by buying one VMAX Umbreon and selling it a year or 2 years later for double. People who are playing that game and playing the money game are buying quantities like, where people used to buy booster boxes, multiple booster boxes per set. Those same people are buying multiple booster cases now. Just everything has scaled up over the years. So you got to just keep that in mind. But people like chasing the dollars, even if it's, anywhere they can make $5, even if they held the card for 6 months, they're excited. So it's a strange game we play, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there I could go through trying to find maybe larger individual plays, but I don't have the capital to like roll the dice on a raw poncho, for example, because it's too much risk. Could I do it? Yeah, but if I get bit, that sucks. But that's why I think it makes more sense to play the safer, more midterm tier as well.
Yeah.
But it really just kind of finding the sort of method in what you choose that fits your situation, because anybody can make money within this hobby. Money to maybe you want to cash out temporarily and pay off something, or maybe you have a card you're going after. That's how you get to that next level, at least in my opinion, unless you make a shit ton of money, and that doesn't matter, in which case all the more power to you. But if you're trying to save and all these other things, trying to put a little bit to the side and flip, make that $2 become $4, $4 become $8, just slowly just keep on going. I mean, that's basically what you've done at this point, and look at where that's got you.
Yeah. Yeah, just got to hustle all the way up, collect what you want. Ideally, if you're passionate about the hobby and you are well in tune with pretty much everything, anything that you enjoy, other people are going to enjoy. So it's not tooting my own horn or anything, but everything that I've gotten into, I feel like to some extent has paid off because other people are into it as well. It's just, it's not any intuition that I have. It's just what everybody's feeling. And maybe I had more capital or a bigger collection to get in those things a little earlier than others. but it just pays off in the end because people collect the same stuff. You know, people are collecting ponchos more than ever. People are collecting Charizards more than ever. Watsy. So there's always someone out there. I was going to be curious, off the top of your head, how many... So I was looking at Evolving Skies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the pools. I can't remember if they count the full art trainers as like a big hit in the box, but essentially you have the VMAXs that are separate from the Vs, and then you have the full art trainers, and then you have rainbow rares, and then you have gold rares. So 4 rare types that could be like your box hit to also further dilute the alt art. So how
Still gotta
many?
get weathering rares.
Yeah, how many rainbow rares do you think were in that set off the top of your
Evolving
head?
Skies,
Yeah,
36.
it's a little too
What?
much. I mean,
Oh, they have had some that were a lot. So
this one's a lot. I don't think they've ever had
okay.
36, but
I thought, I know there was a lot in towards those later sets from that Sword and Shield era. They got stupid in terms of how many secret rares were in there.
there's probably, I mean, there's about 36 potential pools altogether between the full arts, the rainbows, the golds, and the
Okay.
VMAXs. So
All
that's
right. Well,
that's
they didn't
about
get
like the
crazy with it.
hits. So yeah. But like how many of those 36-ish do you think are
No, that's
rainbow
right.
rares?
Half.
Yeah, about 16 rainbow rares in that set. And then,
I knew it
gold
was,
rares, most sets have 1 or 2. How many do you
yeah,
think Evolving Skies has?
8.
12. They have 3 Pokemon, like 6 items and or stadiums, and then 3 energies that are all gold rares. So all of that diluting the pool of, VMAXs. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I just got onto the thing now, and they do have two cool landscape slash like architecture areas. Like on their gold cards.
Yeah,
They
but
have a series of like I mean, I know nobody. I'm probably one of the few people that actually thinks that these cards are cool, and that's why. This is why the hobby is so great. Like, I love these cards. I bought a bunch the last show we went to here locally, and that's something I'm gonna buy probably a little bit on the side too. Like, they're so dirt cheap, where might as well.
yeah. But like if you're opening Evolving Skies for the price it is now, I mean looking at all these gold rares, some of them are cool, but like you're not happy pulling any of these golds or any of these rainbows
Let me
or
tell you.
or any of these character arts or Vs. Like Rayquaza V, Umbreon V, and a couple other of the evolution Vs are pretty cool, and you're like, oh, that's cool, but I mean, it's V Maxes are where it's at.
I
Even if it was only V Maxes, for some reason, you have a Durlodon V Max in there to also throw off your hits. So if you can have a V Max guaranteed pack, I mean, there's a chance you're gonna pull a Durlodon, which sucks.
I
So
think I pulled in one of the evolving or the EV Heroes booster boxes I opened. I think it was the first one actually. I pulled the Rainbow Gordy. And in Japanese booster boxes, at least for those, you had one guaranteed secret rare, but the chances of you having more were very, very small. So when I pulled that, you can imagine what I felt.
yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah, that Durlodon V
disappointment.
Max, it's only yeah, looks like you can buy a PSA 9 for 20 something bucks. So bad time if you pull that one. But yeah,
Was that
kind of
you?
crazy.
I don't remember. I think he did open. I mean, I'll tell you what. That set, I had a lot of fun. That set is going to be nostalgic for me down the road with EV Heroes. I think I kept 3 packs
I didn't
from
open
EV
much of it.
Heroes.
I have one pack. I'll probably bring it to Collecticon to open. But I
Well,
remember
yeah.
pulling a gold Cresselia. I pulled a gold Cresselia, and
Ooh.
that's like the only thing I remember.
Uh,
I pulled the Alt Art
it's
V.
shiny.
I pulled the Alt Art V Sylveon, actually. Just Sylveon V, not the V Max.
Oh, yeah. I pulled the Espeon in one of the booster boxes.
Yeah.
It
Espeon, that's
was
one of my favorite ones. The Espeon
yeah.
V. That's another thing for me. I like a lot of the V alt arts more than the V Max alt arts. So,
Well, the Espeon V is very unique because it's like this Espeon is moving things around with her or its psychosis or not psychosis, but telekinesis.
yeah. She's a freak.
Yeah, psychosis. You wouldn't even hurt a fly. Uh, no, that one is definitely good. Umbreon V is, and I love Noivern V. Noivern V gives me the Batman vibes. That's why I love that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. What you think of the Mask of Change secret rares that they've been
Oh,
revealing? It's
oh,
a next set coming up.
I have a few opinions on that one. Not that the cards are like bad. No, I think the cards are actually pretty cool. They keep on having these unique art cards. But let's get talking on the 130 Carmine. Okay, I showed you in our chat. I was like, that look. I was like, I that look is kind of familiar. It's pretty comparable to the look Nala gave Simba in The Lion King when
Wow.
when Nala is like, feel in the air tonight, it's like in the middle, and Simba just found her and all that. It's a similar look. Okay, they know their target audience is all I gotta say.
Yep.
When it comes to this card, at least they know their target audience. And then I do love the Kieran one. I love the background and all the little things involved, and I love also how they're using in this era utilization of what's essentially like shutter speeds. Like it
Mm-hmm.
shows movement. Like the Kieran one shows movement, and that's not the only one that does that. There's multiple ones now. I think there's several ones in the set actually. Come to think of it.
Yeah, and they're doing more like,
Yep,
not
there's
just
one.
more environmental or stylized,
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon in their own element, which is nice, but they're doing really unique designs like Tatsugiri, the little
Yep.
cartoony, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
background. Like it's literally just like a poster of like different Tatsugiri designs. Um, then they're doing the environments like Timber and Chansey, where they're like a working class Pokemon pretty much running around. Then you have stuff like that where it's like they're just in the shutter speed or like showing movement if you were, like if it was a picture or like a real life video. Trying to show movement, a little more stuff there.
There was another one I forget, but there's also Chimecho shows the lower depth of field of like the Pokemon being in focus and then everything else being very blurred out of focus. You can obviously see it's like in a shrine or something, but like that sort of laser sharp focus. And then there was another one, I forget which Pokemon it was.
I think it was Monkey Dory,
Is that what it
the one
was?
right next to him. It's not
Not
really out of
Pest.
focus, but it's got like different art styles. So it's got like a
Yeah, but that's not that's true. Yeah, I'll have to find.
yeah. I like Monkey Dory because it's in like the cherry blossom tree that's like glowing, and like the Pokemon, it's like cartoony, and then the landscape is nicely like almost like watercolory painted, and then the leaves on the tree is almost an entirely different style. So it's a really nice blend of a bunch of different styles that make for a really nice image. So yeah, pretty cool artwork for sure. I feel like the art's kind of staying the same. We're seeing the same stuff from set to set, like just different styles and little tweaks here and there, but I feel like I'm liking more cards. Like every set that
Well,
comes out, I'm like, oh
hmm
yeah, this one's cool, but I don't like that one.
they're
I'm
utilizing
liking
different
more.
techniques. Yeah,
Yeah.
Cramorant from Crimson Haze was the one I was referring to. That's where like the Cramorant looks absolutely confused about what's going on around him, and everything else is kind of blurred with the people moving. There's one other person that looks like they're staying still, but it looks like they're shooting like water guns, a bunch of kids shooting water guns at each other, and then the Cramorant just in the middle, crisps, and clear, just like, huh?
That's from like
Huh?
the Twilight Masquerade.
Yeah, the
Right.
Crimson Haze. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've been utilizing this more, and I noticed it, and it's interesting because it's no longer just like it always felt like kind of like a drawing or a painting, and it is in some ways like an artwork, right? And this is too, but like I feel like they didn't utilize incorporating these different types of medium into the actual work. I think that is new in this era.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, that's like the new little twist they had in the last few
Hmm.
sets for sure.
Yeah.
But yep, let's see what else did we have to talk about. 151 reprint. A lot of people have been selling those. I've seen some. I can't remember what they were, but I feel like some people were selling them to like 100 to 120 a box.
I saw some
Um,
even lower than that.
yeah, but I know Pokey and E Brian over
Yeah, to
there.
say.
He
Yeah.
was he was selling them in waves, first come first serve, and he sold out and like kept away for himself just because they were selling out so fast. It's just one of those things where people just bought as many as they could get as possible, and they still sold out. So it's a set that people just love opening no matter what, and
Yeah, I mean,
it's always going to be a popular one. It's hard for me to think of, as far as sets that are worth like quote unquote investing in. Obviously, Evolving Skies has seen its uptick multiple times, and like we said, Sword and Shield sets are starting to move. But 151 just kind of makes sense. Even though the set isn't as big or as crazy, it's like it's fun. It's fun chasing the Master Ball reverses. I can only imagine if they introduce that in the English side, but it's just one of those sets people are going to sell out no matter what every time there's a reprint, kind of like Evolving Skies was. And it's going to be one of those sets that do pretty well. Might take a little bit, but it's a pretty safe bet, especially right now, right after we just had a pretty big reprint considering everything. So,
well, what I like about that set is it has from 1 to 151 numbers. It has obviously the Pokemon in sequential order, and I really like that. It's a set you can collect the whole thing.
yeah, pretty easily too. Like,
Yeah, and it's really not that many secret rares.
I thought about at Collecticon even buying like a booster box of it to open because that'd be one of the most fun things to open for
You know?
sure. But yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about is there was a really good video. It was from Peak Dat Chew on YouTube, and he sat down with Charlie Herlocker, who's a really big name in the hobby that a lot of people might not know. He kind of stays behind the scenes. He doesn't really make videos or anything, but he pops up every once in a while. He's very into the business side of things. He worked at Ludkins in the very early days before all the craziness. He's done a couple other things in the shadows of the hobby. He's a big collector, big buyer and seller of cards. Um, they also sat down with Lee Leonhardt and Zach, aka Jim at Pokemon. They had a lot to talk about as far as the eBay changes and the fee structure and people, making a living off the eBay vault and how all that's going to change. Stuff we talked about a lot, last time. And it's a really good conversation, but I'll leave that part for the video if you guys are interested in that. Zach has been working for a guy who kind of is semi involved in tag grading. I haven't really looked much into it, but it's like a company that uses more of a AI and automated based system to grade cards. So that I think they're trying to, be a step ahead of everybody as far as AIs and scans go to take out the human element of card grading, which is cool in its own way.
Yeah.
I think all
Th-
companies are gonna semi have something like that, even if it's like human assisted.
I think there
You
is
know,
some definitely benef benefits from doing that. A lot of things aren't haven't been AI has been overutilized and oversaturated in a lot of areas, and in fact, in some areas, it's gonna with automation and all that, it's gonna rob of a lot of jobs and you know, etc. of all that. But this is something where I think could actually benefit the hobby within itself because of it takes out potential bias.
yeah. Even if you like designed it where it had like total accuracy, and even if you human reviewed the cards that weren't 100% accurate, that would cut down on the workload a lot. So it would, hopefully give the graders more time to focus on the card. If the machine, it could be like loosely tuned to where like if the card is absolute flawless, like it passes. If there's anything, it has to be human reviewed. That would cut down on a little bit of the workload. But one thing that stuck out to me wasn't exactly the use of AI, but a service they might be offering in the future. And Jim Mint was kind of hinted at this that later on in the year, Tag might have some type of pod, almost like a. It seems like, or what came to mind was like a key cutting machine. Something that you walk up and pay, and you stick something in, and it like takes your key and cuts it. Or those like penny machines at like carnivals and stuff that like smash your penny into a design like that. This is what kind of the vibes that it gave me, but he said they're working on something like that to have in TCG stores or at events where you could just insert your card and pay, and it would like grade your card and encapsulate it in plastic like there on the spot. So you could like watch your card get analyzed, graded, and slabbed like right in front of your eyes in this machine, like a kiosk. So that is really interesting. I don't know how they would like upkeep that or, all the logistics there, but if something like that could be a reality, you could potentially see card grading going all the way down, $5 for sure, maybe even lower for like some small companies like Tag. So it's really interesting the things that we're seeing, and it makes me excited to see the hobby about 3 to 4 years from now when things are, 2020 is kind of behind us, but we're still working out the kinks. And then we still have these new companies like Tag trying to step in, CGC still trying to do stuff. BGS just announced price slashes. The whole eBay PSA golden news. These huge companies are still working out the kinks. Like eBay just got into the vault business because it was the smart thing to do. Everyone like needed it. And now they're like offloading it and taking in golden, and all this stuff's moving around. So even the biggest of the big bad boys are still working out the kinks logistically from, this hype that we've seen sustain itself. So 3 to 4 years down the road when all that's worked out and we see, like tag grading pods in TCG stores, that's going to be really exciting. And I don't know if Tag can get it done or make a name for themselves for getting it done, but even if PSA had something like that, or even CGC, like things could get pretty crazy pretty quick. And kind of seems like it's there's a bright side to it for the collector and the hobby itself. Maybe not as good as the days were, this year and last year as far as selling when you took advantage of these middlemen who are getting 0% eBay vault fees. That's coming to an end, but for the hobby as a whole, we're seeing some exciting stuff. So, what you think? Would you say if a card wasn't worth it to send into PSA, it was a $20 PSA 10, and you put it in this tag machine, and you only had to pay $3 to grade it, and it might be like a $15 tag 10. Like, would you use one of those kiosks?
I'd have to run the numbers. I think you're better off playing that money elsewhere.
Yeah, but if you could
I
turn like
mean,
a
I don't know. I
$5
mean,
card, pay $3 and get 15. Like, you'd only be making a few bucks, but what can you expect with the $15 card?
it's basically it'd be no different than what I'm doing with the cards I'm going after for KCCon. So I mean, I get it, but it's like I don't know. The graded slabs would have to move quickly to make it worth it. That's the only way to do something like that because you're dealing with a pure numbers game more or less. So are there enough people interested in tag slab cards to make that viable?
Yeah.
If not, then it's not worth it. And I don't think that's the case. Because I have heard a tag. Like a few years ago, it was one of the companies that popped up, and I guess it's one of the ones that still remain. But I mean, you and I both know the approximate market share PSA has, what CGC has, and tag. Who?
Who was that?
Yeah. So, I mean, not to be disrespectful necessarily to them, but I mean, it's true. A lot of people would say that they've never heard of it, and it's not worth it as it stands.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to talk about is PSA in that same whim kind of stated in, I think it was a sports card investor. He had someone talking on his show, but PSA starting to and able to quantify PSA graders' accuracy. So when I say that, how do you think they're measuring the accuracy, like, of these graders? So it kind of sounds like they're wanting to hold graders accountable. Like, oh, this guy's more of a harsh grader. We need to tell him to up his game. This guy's more of a soft grader. He needs to, like, kind of strict his rules a little bit. They're trying to get everybody on the same page. So, like, how do you think they could do that?
Hmm. How can they get on the same page for PSA grading accuracy?
Or, like, if you were in charge of, like, 5 graders, how would you track
Well,
them to measure their
it
accuracy?
ultimately becomes you try to find a way to do a subjective skill into an objective measure, right? So how do you do that objectively?
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting question. I think that it really is this. I understand the desire to do it because the intentions are good for it, but it really feels like a superficial stat unless you do consistency. And I don't know how you measure consistency necessarily by how well the tens are graded or whatever cards are graded.
So it's a lot easier than you think. It's all they're doing, from what this interview states, they're just taking the gem rate of that card and they're just comparing it to the grader itself. So
So they're putting it on an average.
how many cards, how many of that card were graded and how many of those got a 10? They take that percentage and apply that to the person. Like, how many of that card has this guy graded and how many 10s has he given? So, makes sense. It's a little, like, too surface level to really matter that much, I think, unless, like, you have this guy who's given a 10 40% of the time when that card in general is getting a 10 30% of the time. But then you have to also average out how many of that card is that person saw compared to the other one. So it's interesting. I heard this news, like, on the back end of, like, that tag AI thing, and I'm like, ooh, maybe they're incorporating AI somehow. and like pre-grading cards and just seeing if people are consistent, like testing something like that out. No,
Psych.
no, they're just doing what they're normally doing. They're just like comparing percentages. So it's like, okay.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you're right. That was a lot more simple. I made it overly complex than it needed to be.
Well, that's what I thought
But
initially too. It's like, oh, maybe
you
they're
know,
incorporating this or scanning or AI, but nah.
I mean, it makes sense. The only other thing that would have came to it is there was somebody overviewing them to, but then you're having some person grade a card twice, which is very inefficient.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what I was running through my mind too. And I mean, I get it. They see it as a number system in terms of value, and it makes it to where when people see that, it's like, oh, look at that. Look at PSA's, standards. I do think the intentions are good, but there's also a little bit of corporate speak in there. You know what I mean, or corporate intentions as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
Like
corporate
like
number crunching pretty much.
exactly. And I mean, again, intention's good, but there's a little bit of that going on. Like here, we can let this show to our customers and our PSA club members.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just quantifying the data, which makes sense. Yeah, pretty crazy. But
But then again, when analyzing things, you're looking at from an objective standpoint and saying, I think there was a topic, obviously, and you still kind of see it with PSA versus CDC. Well, there's a lot of people that, especially on social media, that they would post like some of PSA's grading standards, and then you see a CDC 10. That's when they're a lot more strict, and there'd be a lot of people that would trash on PSA from that anecdotal experience. And you know,
yeah.
I lost my train of thought actually right there. I mean, I've only had 4.5 hours of sleep today, uh, and I've been going at it for about 15 hours. So I actually completely lost my train of thought.
Well, we can leave it at that.
Yeah,
That's kind of all I really wanted to touch on today.
yeah.
So, yep. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like anything for us to talk about in the future, let us know. Would you do any AI grading? It would be pretty cool if you could do it there on the spot. It's just a matter, like you said, if there's a market, how liquid is the market? When you get into stuff that low, we say like even the highest end of Japanese cards are niche. Well, so are the lowest end of hollows. Like, not many people are going to be collecting set hollows. Even if like a set hollow gets up to like, I don't know, $20 in a 10, how long can that be sustained if you can grade a card for $3? Everyone's going to take their hollow and go grade it for $3. It's not going to take a whole lot to get it to crash down when it's just a normal set hollow. So $3 grading could be a thing in the future if it's all automated, but it has its downsides too.
Yeah, I would say so.
Anyway, guys, thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.
Well, hold on. I just want to say one thing.
One more thing.
One more
Thought you were
thing.
done.
I'm probably going to make the Instagram post Nala and Kermit.
Get those eyes going.
And then everybody can see exactly what I mean firsthand. I want people to really, I really want to push this through because I don't think it's just me, and I think it's interesting again just because they know their audience.
Yeah. It's definitely there a little bit, not too obvious in the
And
eyes.
no, it's subtle. That's why it's not 100% the same thing, but it's there and it's enough.
Yeah. It's there.
It's there.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Peace out.